seraphs flew to me, holding a live coal that had been taken from the altar with a pair of tongs. The seraph touched my mouth with it and said, "Now that this has touched your lips, your guilt has departed, and your sin is blotted out." Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And I said, "Here I am, send me." Give you special greetings here on Laity Sunday. I'm so proud of the laity in our church. You're such an active group of people. And you can smile too. But you're such an active group of people. And every organization that I belong to, where it's been active, people are proud of the organization. You can be very proud of this church. I'm very proud not only of the church, but the fact that I have this church family, and that you have allowed me to work in this rather exalted position. I feel that I'm not quite worthy for it, but I'm doing the best I can. I look back, not too many years, I look back and the idea of me behind the pulpit would have been patently ridiculous. Although I might have chosen other worse words for that, but it would have been ridiculous to think that Earl Heath would be up here presenting a sermon. But God provides, and here I am. As you may have noticed from the reading that Barbara did so well for us, I'm going to be talking about Jonah. When I first heard of Jonah in Sunday school, it seemed very much like a fable, and I could not understand why it would be in the Bible, because it would be in cartoons. We've seen people being swallowed by fish in many, many cartoons, and even in Pinocchio, Disney had Pinocchio swallowed by a fish. And there's always somebody that saves them, or they find some driftwood and they set it on fire and the smoke causes the fish to spit them out. And I thought, why is that in the Bible? But as I studied Jonah and I read the biblical story, I noticed that there are a tremendous number of principles there. I could make several sermons just out of the book of Jonah, though Brother Francis warned me that I shouldn't do them all today. God is talking to Jonah and asks him to go to Nineveh. Nineveh has come away from God. Their moral standards have decayed. They are on the road to ruin. God gives them 30 days or they will be treated as Sodom and Gomorrah. He wants Jonah to go to Nineveh and tell them to watch out, to get back on track. And Jonah said, "But I'm not very good speaking in public." And God said, "I have confidence in you." And Jonah said, "Well, my foot hurts. I don't know if I can walk that far." And God said, "I'll help you." And Jonah said, "But that's an enemy city. If I go to Jonah, I'm liable to be killed on the road. Or if I do get to the city, I'm liable to be killed as soon as I open my mouth and they recognize my accent." And God said, "I've got your back," or a term like that. And Jonah continued to argue with God. It sounds an awful lot like when I asked some of the people in our laity to become lay speakers. Eventually, Jonah gives up. He just can't argue with God anymore. And he does what we've seen the teenagers do. "I can't hear you," and he runs to the coast. He gets on a ship and he goes down into the very bowels of the ship, into the bottom hole. Gets down into the bottom hole of the ship. He curls up in a corner. He's hidden from God. Yet we all know that God has his own GPS. You can't get away from God. So God decides to play a trick on Jonah. And he causes a big storm to come up. And the boat is rocking back and forth. forth, and the water is sweeping over the deck, and the sailors are scared to death because they know they're going to drown. And they all look around and they say, Who was it that insulted God? Who made God angry? And the sailors look at each other and say, Not me. Not me. It wasn't me. Who, me? That wasn't me. And so the ship is about to capsize, and they go down to look through the ship to make sure everybody gets off, and they find Jonah down in the corner in that hole. And they get him up on the deck, and they tell him what's going on, and he says, well, he said, I guess it was me that got God angry. But I had a good reason. Of course, the sailor said, we don't want to hear you. And they threw him overboard. He was one who really did forsake God. But did God forsake him? If God had forsaken him, he would have drowned. But God did not let him drown, because God does not forsake you. God got a big fish to come by and pick up Jonah. And Jonah spent 3 days in that fish. Now, some of you who are fishermen can imagine what it would be like to be inside a fish for 3 days. That first day, all Jonah did was pray. Get me out of here, please get me out of here, I'll do anything, get me out of here. And what did God say? It was the wrong prayer. And what did God say? I can't hear you. By the third day, conversations with God had taken place, and Jonah started to see the error of his ways and the right of God to want to save the people in Nineveh. And at that time, God caused the fish to spit Jonah up on the beach. He had gone from the wrong prayer to the right prayer. And I want to read again this second part of Barbara Cooper's reading this morning. So the second reading from Jonah chapter 3. The word of the Lord came to Jonah a second time, saying, Get up, go to Nineveh, that great city, and proclaim to it the message that I tell you. The important part is, the word of the Lord came to Jonah when? A second time. God gives us a second chance. We may forsake God, but God does not forsake us. God gave Jonah a second chance. I've had some experiences with forgiveness. Many of you have too. I had a very close friend cheat me out of money. And he did it legally. There was nothing I could do about it. But a friendship that had built over the years was gone. I got angry, as most of you might think I should get angry. I could not forgive. I went many months with anger in my heart until I finally had the opportunity, and I sat down with a friend of mine, and through his consultations and lots of prayer, I was able to come up with forgiveness, and all of a sudden, my personality changed back. My daughter's much better than that. She and her husband, Jamie, are missionaries, and they run a campus in Kentucky in a very depressed area. And they bring church groups in to help work in the communities down there. They're painting churches, having vacation Bible school, doing various revivals, putting in wheelchair ramps and everything in the community. A couple that was working with them was causing some problems. The mission of my daughter and her husband, their family, and others there had for the campus was not the same vision as this vision of this mission, this other couple. And they were very self-centered, and it wasn't working out. So after a period of time of talking with these people, my daughter and her husband asked them if they would leave. And they gave them 6 months. They said that within 6 months you should find another place where you can go. And for 5 months of that time, things were pretty good. Everybody was helping everybody else, and it was working very well towards them leaving. And then that last month, for some reason, anger built up, and the people that were being, as as they thought, fired. Any of you that are employers that have fired an employee know what we're talking about. It can come up with anger. And for that last month, the other couple did everything that they could to disparage my daughter and her husband. On Facebook, with emails, with actual letters to the churches that were supporting them. They did nothing but disparage my daughter and her husband. And my daughter and her husband had forgiveness in their heart. And from the very beginning of that starting, they were more interested in helping that couple than they were in being angry at the couple. And that's God's love in your heart. That's something I'm still working towards. The other couple did leave. The other couple left in a much better mood. And within 2 months, they were friends again. They were not working together, but the apologies had come back and forth. They were friends again. And that's what forgiveness can do. You see, anger controls you. Anger causes a feeling that you need retribution, that you need revenge. Your personality changes. You're obsessed with getting even, and the anger clouds your heart. The love in your heart is diminished. But Jesus, even on the cross, said to those who had tortured him, those who had punished him, to those who had made him carry the cross through the city, to those who crucified him, he said to God, forgive them. Forgive them. You put God's love in your heart, and with forgiveness, you regain control. Anger can destroy you, but forgiveness can bring you back to God. This is from Matthew chapter 18, verse 21. Then Peter said to Jesus, Lord, if another member of the church sins against me, how often should I forgive? As many as 7 times? And Jesus said to him, not 7 times, I tell you, but 77 times. And I hope today you will take with you the example of Jonah. I'm sorry. Move 2 pages instead of 1. And I'll forgive you. When God relents and brings Jonah back on the beach, Jonah goes to Nineveh. He's not hurt on the way. He's not hurt while he's in Nineveh. He doesn't go deep into the city. He kind of stays in the suburbs, sets up a little tent there, and he starts talking to the people. God's upset with you. God's going to destroy your city in 30 days. You all do not have very good morals. You're going to have to change your ways. But what happened, even though he was doing this in a somewhat half-hearted way, because this was indeed his enemy city, the people caught on, and in retrospection, they started looking at, yes, our morals have changed. Yes, we are not praising God. Yes, we are not doing what we should be doing, and they changed. And throughout the city, a change came over the city, and even the king heard about it. And the king declared a day of fasting, another day of preaching, another day of glory to God. And God relented. God said, no, I will not destroy Nineveh as I did with Sodom and Gomorrah. And Jonah is upset. Kind of like he lost a ball game. That was his enemy. His enemy is saved. And once again, a disciple of God just doesn't get it. Have you noticed how many disciples have problems? They decide to do it their way. They decide to change the rules or the sayings or something. It just does not, they don't quite understand. I thought we ought to write a couple of books, a dummy's book for disciples of God or something, or the idiot's guide to being a God's disciple, because the disciples never seem to understand. Jesus understood the power of forgiveness. When he tells the parable of the landowner and the servant owed a tremendous amount of money to the landowner and was about ready to be put into debtor's prison. This is horrible because they not only put him in prison, put his family in prison, they sell all their goods, they keep putting more and more of the family members, the relatives in prison until they pay the debt. And the landowner forgave the servant. He forgave the servant, gave him more time. He didn't want him in question. He said, "You've been a loyal servant." So the servant goes rushing home to tell his wife how fortunate he is, and runs into a friend on the street that owes him money. He says, "Hey, where's my money?" My friend said, "I don't have it." "But you owe me the money. You've got to have it." And he actually takes him by the throat and shakes him. And then he turns him over to the authorities, and the authorities put him in jail where he's tortured along with his family. His goods are taken. And shortly after that, the great landowner hears about it. And he calls the servant back in and said, "You have missed the point. The point was forgiveness. As I forgave you, you can forgive others." And God is that way too. He forgives us. He does not forsake us. He forgives us and brings us back into the fold. And we need to do that with others. When you put God's love in your heart, you regain control. I hope you will take with you today the example of Jonah. I hope you will take with you today the words of Jesus. And I hope that God may ever keep his love in your heart. And now if you would please stand as you're able for the Apostles' Creed.